Today's I think it's February 2nd. It's pretty much the off season. Most of these places are closed. But if you can see in the distance over there, Dinosaur World, we're gonna go over there tomorrow. Today we're gonna hit the caves, and tomorrow we'll probably go over to Dinosaur World. We're coming up to the lodge and the visitor center. We're gonna get ourselves some tickets, so we're gonna hit the cave system today. The greatest cave explorer ever known, trapped in a sand cave, January 30th, 1925. William Floyd Collins. He was a great man. We were driving down that winding road and we found this old cemetery. There's a church right there. It's pretty interesting. A lot of the rangers talk about him, and a lot of people celebrate his life and the achievements that he has done for this cave. Mammoth Caves happens to be 426 miles long. One of the longest cave systems in the world. Actually, the longest cave system in the world. And every year, you know, a couple more miles are added to it as they find new passageways. But this is the foothills of the Appalachians here in Kentucky, just outside of Cave City. Here's an old church. I think we should go look inside. Established 1827. Meeting the third of Saturday and Sunday. I wonder when the last time they did the meeting. Maybe they do on certain events. Here it is. Wow, I love these old churches. Yeah, lime green. It's a beautiful church. And you can see these windows, how they're kind of warped. These are really old windows, handmade. Here's the altar. Has some old carpet on it. There's some reading material up there. There's the old Holy Bible. Man, this church has seen better days. A lot of people have written in this church, in this Bible. I'm looking to see the date that this was written. Oh, this is 2021. Man, this Bible it's a pretty new one. Someone here paid tribute. God bless you all. We're going to continue our journey up the road.
A couple of things that can't go with you: no weapons of any kind. Those are firearms, non-bending knives, mace, or pepper spray. And then if you've got food or drink other than plain water, just make sure it's sealed and put away. Other than that, you guys want to get a little closer to the cave? Yeah. Yes. Perfect. Once we get down to the historic entrance, I'll have to cover a little safety information for you. But once we've got that covered, we'll go underground. But you can follow us. It's the 3 o'clock manifest. Okay, a few of you, so we've got a pretty good range. Quentin and I have been down here a couple of times, so you're in good hands. We know where to go, where not to go. More importantly, we know how to turn the lights on and off. And when we get underground, that's definitely the thing you want your rangers to know. But with every tour here at Mammoth Cave National Park, we've got this little laminated card. Every bullet point is because someone who visited before you did or did not do something. So please don't be the reason we have to reprint and relaminate a bunch of these cards. Now, most of this stuff It makes sense. Sometimes though, when we go on vacation, our brains, they kind of shift into a different mode. When we go underground, it happens again. So we kind of get that double whammy here at Mammoth Cave. So I'll cover all of this stuff here pretty quickly. Now our eyes do a pretty good job at adjusting to those low light environments that we are going to be experiencing. So we want to make sure we're not doing anything to take our eyes out of that night mode that we've got going on. So no flash photography is allowed. You are absolutely welcome to take photos, make memories you can share with those who are not here with you today. Just make sure the flash is turned off of those devices. That bright light in a dark space can be really kind of jarring. It can cause medical issues, lots of things like that. And then if you need a little light on the trail, that's all right. But we do ask otherwise, flashlights, headlamps, things like that, stay put away, just because we've got plenty of light down here. So where I'm at right here, this is going to be the smallest thing that we experience today. So watch your head coming down this little slope, but it's going to open up, get even larger the deeper into the cave we get. So come on in, we'll gather around here. Any questions right off the bat? Things you're curious about? Yeah, good question. Yeah, if you got a question, shout it out.
Was this man-made or did it just exist?
Yeah, so this entrance, it is a natural opening. Now they did lower the floor twice throughout kind of modern human history over the last couple hundred years. The first time we'll talk about once we're seeing this room up ahead. The second time in the 1930s as they were preparing us to become a national park, the Civilian Conservation Corps. So the floor originally would have been roughly hip height as we were walking through that passageway. So you would have had to have crawled or a nice low stoop walk.
Wow.
Any other questions? All right, are you okay if I tell you a story?
Sure.
We're gonna adjust the lighting a little bit, so make sure you've got a good footing. So for those of you right up close, don't stare right at the flame. If you've got someone blocking the flame for you, your eyes are gonna adjust pretty well. You're gonna start to see that detail, look up at the ceiling and out at the walls. Now, the cave, rediscovered in 1798. So well over 200 years ago at this point, there was a boy named John Houchins. He had just celebrated his 10th birthday. Now, 1790s, 10 years old is a little bit different than it is today, right? Very different kinds of expectations. And his dad says, John, you're gonna go out hunting, you're gonna go by yourself, you're gonna provide food for the family. So John takes that, he's excited, he gets to be the provider. So he goes out, he sees white-tailed deer, wild turkey, not so different than what you may have seen driving in or around the park today. They're there, but they're not exciting, right? 10 years old, you gotta go big first time. So he keeps looking. Eventually though, up on a ridgeline, he sees something large, black and furry. What do you think that might have been? Bear. Yeah, the American black bear. Now it's been about 100 years since there's been a verified sighting of a black bear here at what is now Mammoth Cave National Park, but they used to be here. So John sees that, he says, that's gonna impress my family. A lot of food, a lot of fur, way cooler than a turkey, right? So he takes aim, he fires, and when that smoke clears, that bear's gone. But he goes up to where he saw the bear, and he realized he hit it. He just didn't kill it. So he tracked it through the woods, a skill you had to have at that point in time. And as the story goes, he tracked it into a great, big, deep, dark hole in the ground. How many of you would follow a wounded, probably angry, black bear into a big, dark hole in the ground?
This guy would right here.
We got a couple of just getting ousted. Right. I usually get some yeses, some no's. You did choose to follow a couple of complete strangers, but I do think Quentin and I are the better alternative to an angry bear. But that's the story. John hunting and chasing a black bear, discovering this entrance to Mammoth Cave. Now, the reason I don't believe that story is because he likely didn't have any kind of a light source on him at that point in time. So he would have had to go home and come back and bring something. So there's some details there that don't quite add up. Some people swear that story is true, every word of it. But it's up to you. It's a story. It's the beauty of stories. You get to decide whether you want to believe it or not. Now, John, if he would have come in here, if that story is true, what he would have found is this. Yeah, wave your hand in front of your face. Can you see anything?
No.
Nope, if you can, I've got the pleasure of telling you you're hallucinating. Thankfully, though, we get to see the cave like this. Are you starting to see where the name Mammoth comes from? Yeah. So Mammoth in size when this cave was discovered and people were starting to become our modern people again last couple hundred years. Mammoth was a word used to describe anything exceptionally large. Now this room is about a ½ acre in size. I've been told that our visitor center would fit inside of this room just to help provide a little bit more scale. Humans don't occur down here naturally, so it's kind of hard for us to grasp sometimes just how large this space actually is. And to give you an idea of how large the rooms and passageways in Mammoth Cave are, the rotunda, number 6. There are 5 known rooms in the cave system larger than the rotunda. Any thoughts or questions before we talk about these artifacts that we're looking at over the handrail here? Anything on your minds other than those? All right, well, you can feel along the handrail anywhere so you can see those artifacts down in there. So that's kind of the first big use of the cave for modern people. So again, 1798, that's the year that John came down, or someone came down, whatever story you choose to believe. But getting into 1812, so we've got a little over a decade passing at this point, that's when these wooden artifacts are coming in. So this dirt is rich in something called calcium nitrate. Now, we don't have a whole lot of bats anymore, but they used to be here. Early visitors from the mid-late 1800s, writing as though these places looked as though the walls and ceilings were alive, filled with so much motion of those little creatures in these places. So a little bit different than how we experience it today. The bats are still here, they're just fewer and farther between, and they're deeper into the cave. But because you've got a lot of bats and a lot of time, all the bat droppings, all the guano turned into that calcium nitrate. By using these boxes, they work kind of like our modern day coffee filter. So the box is the filter, the dirt is the coffee. If you don't like coffee, what's the difference, right? But then you put water through and you get your intended product. In this case, they're dissolving those nitrates. This post that's standing up in the middle of that pit, that would have been one of 4 legs, the base of a pump tower. They would have been up at the ceiling in here, pumping that mixture up so they could then gravity feed to the surface using hollowed out tree logs, and that's what we were seeing embedded in the dirt to the right as we were making our way in. So they would send that to the surface, boil it down, add a few other ingredients, a lot of chemistry going on over 200 years ago, turning calcium to potassium to eventually make saltpeter. Anyone know what saltpeter is and has been used for?
Gunpowder.
So, yeah, gunpowder. Yep, you add some sulfur, some charcoal, a few other things, you can make that gunpowder. Why is that important in the year of 1812? Yeah, the War of 1812, sometimes known as the Second War for American Independence or the Second American Revolutionary War. Not taught very well, but we all know a little bit about it. The words from our national anthem come from the War of 1812. Now, they estimate, when I say they, our scientists here who know a lot more about saltpeter than I probably ever will, they estimate that the dirt in Mammoth Cave and other caves in south central Kentucky make up 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 shots fired during the War of 1812. So pretty significant, right? Right here in south central Kentucky, a lot of gunpowder made out of the dirt here. Now, in kind of an ironic tragedy, twist, the men down here ensuring that freedom for that young nation, about 70 enslaved African American individuals, they would not see that freedom themselves. About 50, 60 years later, their children and grandchildren starting to see the benefits of what they started right here at Mammoth Cave. Now, unfortunately, a lot of their details have been lost to time, so we don't know a lot more than that, but I always make sure it's an important part of the story there. In addition to making all of that saltpeter, making sure that the young United States could maintain their newfound freedom, they were also finding things in the dirt that proved John wasn't the first one in the cave after all. Finding evidence of prehistoric people, we now know were in the cave anywhere from 2,000 to as much as 5,000 years ago. Writings, yeah. Petroglyphs, pictographs. Some tools. Bones. Yeah. Bones, yeah. I will tell you, you are all right on it. So when you start here, especially if you are a full-time, year-round employee, The information you receive to be able to lead these tours, it's like drinking from a fire hose, to give you an idea. Just so much information coming at you at once. So the way that it was easiest for me to remember all of that, I broke all of the evidence into 3 categories. So category number 1, that's anything prehistoric people made or left behind with their hands. We'll continue on over here, so we've got a tour coming out. We'll talk about the categories of all of that up ahead. On our way by though, feel free to take a look at those artifacts, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them in this next room.
Small torches. Some big gourds. Pretty cool stuff, huh? Gypsum and some mussel shells. So gypsum was used as trade by the Indians for trade, medicine, preservatives, and cultural ceremonies. Looks like our tour's going.
One such was an accidental death, and his people chose to leave him in the cave. He was so well preserved they could tell what his last meal was from well over 2,000 years ago. So sunflower seeds and hickory nuts, for those of you who are curious, meaning that he would have been in here in late fall, based on what would have been available in this region at that time. Now, even though there's a lot of evidence left behind, there's a 2,000-year gap where we don't know what was happening on the surface, because while things were preserved in the cave, the surface isn't protected from the weather. It's not protected from animals. It's not protected from humans. So anything on the surface that helps us to fill in those gaps, gone. We probably will never know. Can't say never, but probably not. Now, we know where they were going, again, exploring almost 20 miles worth of cave passageway. We know what they were doing. We know how they were getting there. We just don't know why. And we might not ever know the why. So if anyone wants to change course, change career, and you want to jump into prehistoric studies at Mammoth Cave, see if you can figure any of that out. But the reason that we've got all of this evidence preserved is the geology here. Very dry cave environment, right? Now that's because we've got a roof over our cave system. Everything we're seeing in here is limestone, but that roof on top, our cap rock, is made of sandstone. If water comes into contact directly with limestone, another chemical reaction takes place. That water, slightly acidic, will dissolve away the limestone, either opening it up into spaces like this, or if it's moving really slowly, it will redeposit into those formations that we typically think of when we think of caves, the stalactites, stalagmites, things like that. A majority of Mammoth Cave, totally dry, but that's why we've got 5,000 years worth of human history here.
So you said this was sandstone up there?
So this is all limestone in the cave, but there's a roof over the cave system, another type of rock that layers sandstone on the surface.
Is that harder than a limestone?
I'm
Or
not sure. Do you know,
The same?
as far as the hardness of the two rocks, how they compare?
I'm not for sure of the hardness of the two rocks. Both are sedimentary rocks.
Yeah.
So same kind of rock formation. As far as like the hardness in between the two, I'm really not
Yeah,
for
because
sure.
you were saying the limestone gets eroded real easy with water. and
Yeah.
it's just- Seems like
And
sandstone
with the
would
water,
too.
it's because it's slightly acidic, so it's not pure water. So it's just a chemical reaction with the calcium, the base that is the limestone. So that's why there's that reaction. Sandstone doesn't have the same reaction to anything acidic. So it'll weather and erode, it'll break down on the surface more. It's not quite as sturdy that way.
That's why it stayed up there maybe.
Yeah. But I don't know, that's a good question though.
Does this national park, does it have anthropology or archaeology rangers?
It
So
does.
we've got a department,
Oh,
so
okay.
science and resource management, and they're the ones that are going to do anything with wildlife, anything with significant human history beyond just
Okay.
sharing the stories. They've got probably, 10 employees over at SRM, so it's a pretty small group, but we do have that just because it's, I mean,
Very cool.
it's extensive, the stuff that we've got here.
It is a historical park, right?
Yeah.
It's put on, what is it called? The historical landmark or something like that.
I'm not sure what that, we are a World Heritage Site.
That's the one I was looking for,
Okay,
World
yep, I was
Heritage
like,
Site,
maybe
yeah.
that's what we're getting. So we're, yep, a World Heritage Site, and it has to do with that depth of human history.
That's pretty
Now,
cool.
they've had to kind of update our foundation documents as far as, why the park became a park. Because originally, when we became a national park, there wasn't as much knowledge or interest in the prehistory of it.
Yeah.
And so we didn't become a park because of prehistoric people. We became a park because of the 150 years prior of modern people. But now, since we know the significance, they have updated that foundation document to include the
Very cool.
significance of prehistoric Native Americans.
Guess it's at the point where even tourism is historic in this park.
It really is. 1816 was the first time someone paid to see the cave, and
Wow.
here we are.
1816.
1816. Well over 200 years later, people still willing to follow a stranger into a cave.
That's very true. Here we are.
But I mean, it's a
We
good
come here
experience.
3 different times, you know.
Yeah, excellent. About a minute or so, we're going to start backtracking. But again, if you've got any final thoughts or questions before we talk about modern exploration on the way out, let me know.
Was that group that passed us, was that the historical trail?
Yes. Yep.
was,
So they
okay.
start in the same place that we did. We went right in the rotunda, that first room. They go left,
Gotcha.
and then they've got about 2 miles before they pop out that side passageway where we saw them.
I remember seeing hydroglyphs, I think like it was maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
A bunch of different hydroglyphs.
Yeah, and if you go on a Violet City Lantern tour, that one digs a little bit more into the
Oh, wow.
prehistory and some more evidence. It's a lot of the artifacts are cane reed torch fragments, their light source that they would have had.
Yeah.
And so there are literally, thousands of pieces of evidence, but a lot of them are just these little sticks.
Yeah.
Which is significant if you know what it is. If you don't know what it is,
The first hydroglyphs was with fire, right? They'd take the candle or the torch and they'd like mark their names on it with the fire.
yep, they'd use that, and that's how we kind of date to get an idea of just that kind of
Ooh,
left behind, the marks
carbon.
that they were leaving, or the stoke marks. Sometimes they
I think
just
just
tap
one
it to
more
clear.
space.
Yeah, so there's some examples of that cane reed.
Oh, wow. That's
so these have
pretty cool.
been,
Small torches.
Those are little artist
so,
tools.
so
What
they're.
would they use to ignite
So,
it?
so prehistoric people would have had bundles of cane reed. So essentially, it's a little bamboo species, but it grows by the river here. So they would have had bundles of this as their light source. They would have had to bring multiple in because they'd only get about 30 to 45 minutes worth of light on a single bundle. But they'd be down here for probably hours on end based on how deep into the cave they were getting. Good. Excellent. Thank you. All right, we're going to make our way back onto the paving stones, and we'll, again, go really slowly by their artifacts so we can get a good look at them on the way in. To 85 kilometers mapped and surveyed. All of that, for the most part, there are a couple little places that go out from the boundary. Most of that fits within the boundaries of Mammoth Cave National Park. So it's not a straight shot from here to Chicago or Atlanta or St. Louis, but it's a big messy maze of passageways. Even on just this route, there are about a half dozen different ways Quentin and I could have gone if we had knee pads and helmets on us, just to give you an idea of how many passageways overlapping with each other. A big maze, kind of the best way I've got to describe that. We didn't become the world's longest known cave until 1972. Now in 1972, that connection trip, that expedition, the CRF, the Cave Research Foundation, they had a crew of 6 that were going in. They thought they were able to find a connection between the Mammoth Cave system and the Flint Ridge system. Prior to 1972, Mammoth Cave wasn't even the longest cave in the national park. The Flint Ridge Cave was longer. Now, what they expected to be potentially a multi-day expedition, they were able to make a connection overnight. The reason they were able to do that is because they got through a spot called the tight spot, not a tight spot, but the tight spot. To give you an idea, you've got the best of the best cavers talking about how small this space is. So they make their way through that, and eventually they come across water. Now, it's not terribly cold in here, but if you get wet and you're down here for a very long period of time, you can get very sick, you can get hypothermia, so you try to keep yourself as dry as possible when you're in the cave. So the leader of the expedition, seeing this water, realizing it was going to get above their hips very quickly, said, you all stay dry, I'll go ahead. So as he continues, it's kind of a sloping passageway, so the ceiling and the floor are coming down, but that water is staying at the same level. Eventually, there's nothing more than just his head above the water level. He's like, I'm gonna go just a little bit further. And it's a good thing he did, because it opens up into a space not quite this large, but pretty close. And as his eyes are adjusting and he's looking around, his light lands on something shiny, metallic. He found a handrail. Now, because they found that handrail, they knew they made their way into Mammoth Cave on what was a tour opportunity at that point in time. The rest of the crew came forward. What should have been a multi-day expedition, they made the connection between those two caves overnight, and then they took an elevator up and out of the cave. So pretty easy way to end what could have been a really long, really hard trip. But because of that, they connected Mammoth Cave to the world's longest cave, so they added the mileage together. At that time, 144 miles. Again, 426 as of today. And there are some people who think there's just as much to find as we've already found. Now, the stories, the wildlife, a lot of different reasons we are here as a national park. We'll get to see that little bat a little bit closer on our way back out. I want to thank you all for spending a little bit of time with us today, though. Without all of you coming out, I'm just telling Quentin a bunch of stuff he already knows. So thank you for allowing me to share a little new information with you. We'll walk up here, we're going to light up that back door, and then we'll make our way back to this.
Maybe somebody in the comments can tell me what kind of tree this is. I don't know if it's man-made or if that's like some sort of natural twist of a tree. I've never seen that in my life. Pretty cool. Kentucky forest. Fast forward about a day and a half. I'm here in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Ended up driving over here after Mammoth Caves, about a five-hour drive, something like that. But I got the Mammoth Cave patch, and I got all these other different patches from last year. These are all from 2024. I just started collecting patches on my trips and my vacations. So if you guys want to watch me collect some more of these patches, subscribe. I should be doing some trips here soon at the other national parks, state parks, and places in between.